If Las Vegas is a city built on illusion, then perhaps the Bellagio is the most perfect masterpiece of deception. This resort is a stunning Italian masterpiece. From its iconic fountains to its grand marble halls, the Bellagio is designed to make guests believe it represents the pinnacle of luxury, stability, and eternal prosperity on the Las Vegas Strip. But that very promise is gradually collapsing. Behind the glamorous facade that tourists see every night lies a completely different reality. Costs are being tightened, staff are being cut, and the pressure of work is increasingly weighing down on the people who are running this symbol of luxury. The most concerning thing is those signs of decline don't come from financial reports or mainstream media. They come from the employees themselves, those who have witnessed standards being lowered, trust eroded, and loyalty no longer reciprocated as before. Bellagio is not just facing a business crisis, it's losing something more important, the trust and spirit that once made its name. In today's video, we'll hear revelations from insiders to expose the crisis hidden behind Las Vegas's most luxurious icon. And this truth might make you look at the Bellagio with a completely different perspective. Bellagio was born as a $1.6 billion mirage, a 1998 American statement that there were no limits to what money could make real. At that time, Vegas wasn't just building a hotel. They built a symphony of light, water, and music that made the desert suddenly seem truly magical. Class is measured by very flashy things: water fountains that shoot up to 460 feet, cold white marble sparkling glass, and opera melodies as if the entire strip is playing the role of an outdoor Broadway stage. Nevertheless, Bellagio is not just for the elite. It was once the manifesto of a prosperous era where luxury was like a mass privilege, regardless of whether you were middle class or low income. But after more than 2 decades, that symbol is gradually shedding its skin. Bellagio is no longer a symbol of prosperity, but has become the perfect portrait of a luxury that has lost its soul. What was once considered the pinnacle of hospitality is now perceived as an emotion-calculating machine. It no longer creates luxury through hospitality, but through the ability to price joy and the feeling of belonging. Luxury is no longer a life experience. It became a fragmented chain of choices, where every smile, every glass of wine, every enjoyed minute had a price. So precise and formulaic that one forgot that happiness is inherently immeasurable. Things that once overwhelmed people, fountains in the desert, dazzling marble halls, music echoing all night, now feel like a pre-programmed performance repeated over and over like a soulless, money-guzzling machine. In the Bellagio, luxury seems to cease being a genuine experience and becomes a daily performance for those willing to pay to cling to the past, to feel they still belong to the wonderful world of old. Perhaps that's why the Bellagio is the perfect embodiment of the aging American dream. People have to pay a lot of money to feel special instead of being treated as special. If in the 2000s the Bellagio reflected faith in the future, today it illuminates the self-deception of a society clinging to the past with artificial lights, and with bills that have added many more digits. When every light comes with a fee, when every drop of water is converted into revenue, does that beauty still belong to the public, or has it become a commodity reserved only for those who can afford to pay to see it? The answer is perhaps right on the Bellagio's own symbol. The fountains are gradually being privatized. The Bellagio fountain was once the public heart of the entire Las Vegas Strip. A free, beautiful moment where the rich and the ordinary stood side by side, looking in the same direction and believing that Vegas still held magic. It's not just a water show. It's Bellagio's way of proving that luxury can be accessible to everyone, that class doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive. But that magic is being downgraded in a way that's very hard to deny. The frequency of performances is no longer as high as before. From a 15-minute interval during peak hours, it has been stretched to 30 minutes or longer at many times, and some nights shows are even cancelled without a clear explanation. It no longer feels like a ritual, more like a casual schedule. If it's on, watch it. If not, don't. And when a symbol begins to live in a whatever kind of way, it's eroding its core value. Not only has the frequency changed, but the soul of the fountain has also been diluted. Music that was once symphonic, operatic, making each performance feel like a condensed Broadway moment, is now perceived as repeating a few bland pop songs, lacking the highlights and seasonal events that used to draw people back multiple times. When music becomes impoverished, emotions also become impoverished. The fountain is still spraying, but it no longer leaves people breathless with awe. Then the signs of deterioration began to show in the most painful way. Dying jets created conspicuous gaps. The clusters of lights burned for longer, and the water pressure was weaker, as if someone were gradually turning down the volume of the icon. The brown water stains around the lake, the accumulated algae, are not just an aesthetic issue. They create a more uncomfortable feeling being neglected. And the bitter truth is that they persist long enough for people to believe that. No one finds it embarrassing anymore. In the background, the story is perceived as an operational problem. The maintenance team is overloaded, running from one incident to another, putting out fires more than preserving. When a symbol has to live in emergency mode, it loses its ability to create magic. And so complaints like waiting 45 minutes for a 3-minute show or half the faucets don't work are no longer isolated incidents. It became a new form of collective memory, the memory of witnessing something once great being made trivial. But the most remarkable thing isn't just about technique. It lies in the privatization of experience. Beautiful viewing spots, once accessible to everyone, are increasingly perceived as being taken over by paid areas, cabanas, or privileged classes, pushing ordinary people to the margins. What was once democratic beauty is now stratified. And that's when the fountain changed roles from a public gift to a facade for selling the right to stand in a better spot. Therefore, the fountain is not only weakened in operation, it is transformed in its social function. When a free icon is undervalued and devalued, it sends a cold message. Vegas is no longer selling experiences, but selling access to experiences. And if the most visible, famous and proudest thing can be made so tired, what else will be revealed behind the door of the room? There are truths you don't see in the lobby. You only see it when the door closes. And that's why the rooms are where the Bellagio is most revealed. Because this is a private experience where the glittering lights outside can no longer hide anything. If the main hall is the stage, then the lounge is the backstage. And behind the scenes, every illusion must confront reality. The signs of wear and tear appeared in a very ordinary way, yet were very difficult to forgive. For a luxury icon, peeling paint, worn corners, a sense of age, and details that were no longer cared for. What's remarkable isn't that they're disastrously bad, but that they exist as if no one considers them a problem anymore. The problem isn't just that it's old, but that it's old in a neglected way, as if deterioration has become normal in management. And when that happens at the Bellagio, it's no longer a matter of this hotel is old, because an average hotel with old rooms can be understandable. But the Bellagio is a symbol of luxury. In the world of symbols, a scratch is no longer just a scratch. It's proof. It says that standards have been lowered, that things that were once unacceptable are now acceptable. Therefore, the feeling of not being worth it is not just uncomfortable, it's insulting. Adults on vacation need more than just a place to sleep. They need assurance that the money they spend corresponds to something more important: respect. When an expensive room feels neglected, the message isn't "we're short on budget," but rather, "we believe you'll put up with it." Small errors in the room are therefore no longer trivial matters. They are understood as signals of something bigger. Maintenance is cut back. Quality, control processes are relaxed, and standards are no longer uniform. And even worse, even if guests try to accept the old room, they still face another reality. The service that was supposed to compensate is also declining. When both matter and people become thin, luxury is left with only its name. If a luxury brand accepts neglected rooms, what does that say about how they view their customers? And when a hotel lives off its past reputation, at what point does the cost of neglect become irreversible? As objects begin to tell the story of decline, the next step is to inevitably look at the most decisive factor: people and services, where the collapse, if any, will become clearer than any peeling paint. There are things customers can overlook: a scratched wall, an old rug, a slightly tired corner of the room. All can be forgiven if the people there make you feel respected. But when hospitality disappears, forgiveness disappears with it. That's why service becomes the most frustrating point. Old objects can withstand wear and tear, but being treated with indifference strikes directly at one's self-esteem. And that feeling is described with a comparison that is cruelly cold. Bellagio, once called a symbol of luxury, at times makes people think of a roadside motel or, worse, a DMV. It's not because it's poor, but because it's bureaucratic. Longer waits, less support, fewer smiles, and everything operates like a procedure. You no longer feel like a guest. You're like a reservation code being processed in a queue. What makes the story even more painful is that this decline is not understood as the employee's personal fault. It is seen as a consequence of an environment that no longer has enough people, time, or energy to perform well. Staff shortages, overwork, burnout, all erode professional spirit in a very quiet way. It's not that the employees want to be bad, and they are put in a situation where good becomes a luxury. This is a direct blow to the Bellagio, as hospitality was once what justified its price. People pay not just to stay, but to be cared for, to have someone proactively help them so that everything runs smoothly, like a ritual. When hospitality is lost, Bellagio loses its reason for existing on a symbolic level, because at that point, all that's left is marble and lights. And the lights can't replace the feeling of being treated kindly. The employees are placed in the position of insiders. They witness standards being lowered every day. They saw the customer was angry. They see their colleagues leaving. And they understand why. When the system is squeezed, the first people to suffer are always those on the front lines. They have to bear the expectations of customers with fewer and fewer resources. Then the chain begins. Customers get angry, complain. Staff are under pressure. Staff quit. Service gets worse. A self-destructive spiral doesn't need a villain. It just needs a system lacking oxygen. What remains of a luxury brand when the most luxurious thing, kindness, disappears? And when employees leave en masse, is that their problem? Or the most honest vote of no confidence in a failing system? When the system fails, it doesn't just make the service bad. It makes everything more expensive, more annoying, and most importantly, makes people no longer want to believe. Vegas used to be a place where you could lose money and still have fun. You know you're being lured, but at least you're being lured generously free. Shows, dazzling lights, moments that make you believe you're living in a city that never sleeps, and if you lose anything, it's just part of the game. But when things started to change, Vegas no longer took your money with a single loss at the betting table. It's marked with small plus signs, legal, silence, repeated so many times that you no longer know what you're paying for. Bellagio and the entire strip today are perceived as operating on a squeeze the last drop logic, not just selling rooms, but selling every piece of experience, every layer of amenities, every bit of peace of mind. The danger lies in the fact that it doesn't look like an obvious scam. It's like a system designed for you to walk into, nod your head, and then realize too late. The initial displayed price always seems acceptable. It's beautiful enough for you to place an order. But then, when you add in fees and mandatory expenses, the total amount becomes a shock. Not because it's high, but because it comes from things you weren't prepared to pay for. And when that shock happens, the feeling of the tourist is no longer, I'm playing big. It's like, I'm being exploited. This is why many people are starting to say that Vegas is losing people, not because Vegas is no longer fun, but because Vegas makes people feel like they are being squeezed dry. The bitter truth is fees and prices don't appear as errors. They appear as part of the system. Consistent, widely applied, and unavoidable, to the point where it completely strips tourists of their sense of agency. You no longer go to Vegas to enjoy yourself. You enter to calculate, to defend, to remind yourself that every choice could be a small trap. What makes consumers angry isn't just the high price, but it's expensive and not worth it. Fees increased while the rooms were old and the service declined. At that point, the invoice is no longer just a number. It became an ethical question: why should I pay so much to get so little in return? That's when the luxury tax becomes a kind of spiritual tax. Tourists pay not only money, but also frustration and vigilance, going out like you're defending yourself. And when money can no longer buy dignity, when long bills no longer come with kindness, consistency and care, the story can't end with "Vegas is expensive." It had to go deeper. Why were people cutting so deeply? Who was keeping the system running? And why were those on the front lines leaving like a silent exodus? There's one thing tourists often don't see and don't want to see, because it ruins the whole illusion. That's when you realize Bellagio is no longer operated as a symbol to be preserved, but as an asset to be optimized. In the world of symbols, every detail is carefully attended to in order to protect the norm. In the world of assets, all that matters is a beautiful number. And when the number becomes the goal, everything else begins to erode in a very quiet way. Strip mining is the accurate term for that process. Corporate-style mining, gradually removing the elements that make up the experience to maintain profits or reduce costs. It doesn't happen with a single chop. It happens in small, regular, logical cuts on paper. Some maintenance has been postponed. Some staff were cut. Some standards are being relaxed. Each individual change can be justified. But when you put them together, you get something terrifying: a symbol that is hollow on the inside but still looks fine on the outside. The people who see the most obvious changes are not the guests. I am an employee. They saw the standards being lowered step by step. They see the pressure increasing with each peak season. They saw their colleague leave. They hear angry customers more often. As humanity diminishes, so does luxury. Bellagio may still be beautiful, but that beauty is starting to resemble a stage set more than a place with soul. A stage still performs, still plays music, still has lights on, but backstage is exhausted. That's why this crisis is called hidden guests. Still come. The lights are still on, and the photos are still beautiful. But the machine inside is losing people, and losing its bearings. From here, the vicious cycle emerges like a trap corporate cuts. Employees burn out, leave. Poor service, angry customers, bad brand. Corporate tightens further. Symbol becomes emptier. And what makes it scary is it runs itself. No single cruel decision is needed. Just one system that continues to view experience as a problem. How long can a brand survive if it retains its architecture, but loses the people who give it its soul? And when employees leave en masse, isn't that the most honest vote of no confidence? Bellagio could still be standing there for a very long time. It might still be lit up every night, people might still be standing in front of the fountain, and photos might still be posted as if nothing has changed. But sometimes something doesn't disappear from the map. It disappears from significance. The Bellagio of old may no longer exist. What's left is a more efficient, smoother and optimized version, but colder, less emotional, fewer people. And that's when people need to understand collapse doesn't necessarily mean closing down or going bankrupt. A symbol can continue to function for years, but still collapse at its deepest level, the symbolic level. When customers no longer trust, when employees no longer stay, when the experience is no longer worth the price, when what once made you eager to step into is just a habit, or worse, a sense of caution. In that way, Bellagio became a mirror for a broader Vegas trend: increased commercialization, rising costs, declining service, and a mechanical experience. People no longer come here just for entertainment. People approach it with a defensive mindset, as if every moment of joy could turn into a cost, every choice could become a small trap. And when joy has to be accompanied by caution, it's no longer joy, it's just a transaction. The scary thing about this type of recession is that it's not noisy. No announcement. There is no death day. It happened like a gradual erosion of feelings. A place that once excited people now only makes them hesitant. A place that once made people believe now makes them calculate. And when a symbol is replaced by calculation, it loses the most precious thing it ever possessed, the ability to create memories. But the story isn't over yet. Bellagio can still transform, not by just fixing the rooms or renovating the lobby, because true recovery isn't about materials. It's about operational culture, in restoring service standards, in paying attention to the small details, in restoring a sense of being respected. If Bellagio wants to live on as an icon, it must remember that the greatest luxury is not marble or chandeliers. The most luxurious thing is consistent kindness, the kind that builds lasting trust. And the impact of this decline isn't just limited to tourists. It lies with the staff who bring soul to the experience. It's located in the Vegas community, where they have to live with increasingly harsh stratification and commercialization. And it lies in the image of Vegas in the American mind, a place that once promised fun, now perceived as a place that promises bills. If you've ever seen a symbol that still stands there but is no longer itself, leave a comment. Because sometimes shared memory is the only way to recognize what is changing before it disappears completely. Bellagio may still be standing there for a very long time. The fountain will still spray. The photos will still shine online. And Vegas will continue to do what it does best: turn light into hope, and hope into consumption. If the Bellagio is truly dying, the saddest thing isn't the old rooms, the weak fountains, or the long bills. The saddest thing is, we are witnessing how a dream is slowly drained. Not by a crash, but by small, legal, calculated cuts. Until it becomes a place that is only beautiful for taking pictures. If you've ever been to the Bellagio or seen a place that was once glorious, but gradually became cold and mechanical, please leave a comment below. I really want to hear your story. And if you enjoy investigative analysis videos in this documentary style, please like to show your support, share, so more people can see it, and subscribe with the bell icon so you don't miss the next episodes. Each interaction you make is not just a number, it's a way to preserve stories that deserve to be seen directly. This video is created for the purpose of analyzing, commenting on, and reflecting on public experiences and information related to the Bellagio and the service entertainment industry in Las Vegas. Some statements in the video are personal opinions and are based on observations, public reflections, and information available at the time of creation. We do not represent any of the organizations or individuals mentioned, and we are not making any legal accusations or absolute claims of wrongdoing. If there are any errors, we are ready to update, correct them, when more accurate information becomes available.